Hey, this is Owen, and this is the first of a two-part video where we're going to build a Node Express Handlebars Heroku app and publish it on Heroku in the cloud. So in the first one, we're going to build basically a template app, just a Node Express Handlebars example. And right now it lives here. If you refresh it, there's a front end and a back end, and it just gives you a new picture of a cat right now. Nothing very fancy, but I'll walk through that and setting up a base Node Express app in the first video as a template that you can use for any project. And in the second video, we'll use that template to build a very modest sample Express full stack JavaScript app. So there's a front end, and the front end uses a couple of web form elements, and you can generate new usernames either using your weather or not. Uncheck, and it'll just use a pre-selected list of nouns and adjectives. If you use weather, it'll the backend will contact the weather.gov API and use your current weather prediction, rainy and temperature 52 is mine, in the username generator. So there's a front end and a back end and an API involved in this. And so in part one, project setup, create the core app, Express, handlebars, etc. We'll talk about servers and cloud hosting, and we'll set up Heroku and make that piece work. And in the second part, APIs, Postman, using Fetch to get API data, connecting web forms to the back end. We'll add logic to our application and then publish it in the end. Okay, so let's get started. So, and here's another view of the pieces that we're going to build. You'll need Postman installed. You'll need a Heroku account. You'll need Node and npm installed on your computer, and as well as Git. You could use Git Bash on Windows, or you can use Terminal on Mac to do all the command line stuff we'll do. Again, so here's the front end, components of the web app, and the servers. So let's get started. We're going to use these instructions that are part of the template. I published it and then renamed it so that I could rebuild it for a video. And so let's get started. The first thing we have to do is create a project folder, make it a Git repository, and then initialize npm. So head over to GitHub Desktop, file new repository, give it a name. We're going to call it sample node express template. And we're going to save it wherever you save your class or project files. I'm going to add a README. I'll add it, get ignored in a second, and I'm going to choose a MIT license. Okay, so I'll create the repository. We just made a folder and initialize a Git in the repository. You could also do this on the command line. So control and backtick will open this in the terminal, and we can ls-la and see that there's indeed a Git and a Git attributes, Git folder and a Git attributes file now. So the next step is that we're going to initialize npm and install our dependencies. So npm init, and it's going to run through a bunch of prompts here for the package name, the version, description, entry point. I'm going to change this to server.js. Test command, get repository. We'll let that default to what I just set up. Author, license, is this okay? Yes. Okay, cool. So we just added a package file, and these are the contents of it. We'll go over this in a second. So let's make sure that we have our project dependencies. We need Nodemon to automatically refresh our app as we make changes to it. So we'll just double check that it is installed globally. And whoops, must have mistyped something. npm can't type and talk at the same time apparently. All right, so that's going to install that. And then next we'll need to install the dependencies in the project folder. So npm install -- save, and then we'll just list them with spaces separating them. So express handlebars, and node fetch, which we'll use on the back end. And so this will update our package file with the dependencies and install them in a node modules directory. And then the next thing is to go ahead and open an atom, and then we'll run through the files that we've made and add some directories we need in our template. Okay, so here we are in Atom, and right now you can see that the node modules it's not being tracked yet, but it does detect that the Git does think that it needs to be committed. And so before I do any commits, the first thing I'm going to do is add a new file, and it's going to be our git ignore file. And so the first thing we want to get in there is node modules. We don't want that. We don't want Git to think that it needs to commit all of that stuff. And then I'm going to paste in this default list of Windows and Mac, basically like meta files that we just don't need to add into our Git repository. Okay, so there's that. The Git attributes keeps the lined endings on your files correctly organized. Here's the license that I added. Here's the package file. We're going to go ahead and add a couple of scripts to the package file. I'm using Atom Beautify and to convert all formatting to tabs. And so I'm going to run Beautify on there, and then I'm going to add my start command. So this will be accessible by just saying npm start, and what it'll do is it'll actually run this on the back end, which will run our server file, which we'll create in a second. And then I'm going to make one called start dev, which is going to run Nodemon. So it'll automatically, so start will be the like production version, and then start dev will be our testing version, and it'll automatically refresh using Nodemon. And we'll go ahead and add the inspect flag so that we can see any details it might give us. And we'll do the same thing with the server.js. And then the next line is going to look exactly the same, except it's we're going to use HTTPS. So we'll say npm start-HTTPS. And this will do the same, except I'm going to have a separate server wrapper file that will use my local SSL certificate and key, so that so basically things work on my computer in the way I've got it set up now. Okay, cool. So so there's that, and again, there's the name and all the stuff we set up with our when we initialize npm, and all the dependencies right there. Okay, so next let's go ahead and add a configuration file for JS hint, and JS hint rc file, and I'm going to paste in my preferred settings here, basically saying that we're using ES version or JavaScript version 8, that every file on our project that's a JavaScript file will be strict, and we won't have to use strict at the top, that all the browser and node global objects are accessible, indentation, and some predefined globals. Yes, we are going to use jQuery in this demo. Okay, cool. So that's the package. That's the get ignore. That's the JS hint. Let's see, what else do we need for our base files? It looks like we're good. Okay, so let's make a the first file, which is a server.js. Okay, and so this is going to be the basically the default file that runs when you start up this app, and so we'll say require it and start the app. Okay, so it's basically just a wrapper, and I do this so that I have the option to either run the HTTP non-secure version for testing, or the secure version. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll require the main app, and which we'll add in a second. And then the next thing is to set the port, which will either come from process, the files that are accessible based on where the process is running in the env file, or default to port 3000. So then we got to listen on the port, and we're using fat arrow functions, and then we'll just say console.log example app listening at http ://localhost : and then this $sign and open and close curly brace lets us insert a variable inside of a string. All right, and then we'll export the module, which is required for publishing on Heroku. Yeah, so there's our port, or not our port, but our server, which will require the app and set the port and start listening. So let's add the app. So the way that I'm structuring this with a kind of wrapper and then the application, it's just one of a million different ways you could set this up. You could have one file. That single file could be called index.js or anything else that you want to call it. This is just the way that works for me, and the way that I've been doing things. But again, Node and Express, it's all because everything's based kind of as a module. You have a lot of control over how you set everything up. So this is the app file, and it ties all the modules together. And so naturally we need to start with our dependencies. Dependencies, that looks good. And so we need Express, so require Express, and this is a package, so we can just say require Express, and because we didn't put a path in here, node npm will automatically know to go look in the node modules directory, and it'll pull Express from there. And then we'll use path, which is built into Node, and then we'll start the app. So the app will be started like this, using the const as the variable type, and then, or the to declare the variable, and then express this function will automatically create the express app. Okay, so we're going to do some other stuff here in a little bit. We're going to add middleware and a few other things. But right now we're just going to make sure that this thing runs. And so we'll export the app, and that should be all that we need to actually start running this thing. So I'm going to move this over here so that we can, oops, let me open that back up. There we go. And probably need to move it up. If I can grab the bottom. Oh, come on. There we go. I just got to move it up so you can see it. All right. Trying to position everything here for the optimal use of real estate. Okay, so now we can say npm start, and that should start it up. Cool. All right, so now we have the app running in terminal, and it's running at this location. Because I've got my current Apache server configuration defaulting to SSL, I have to go ahead and make this wrapper file. So I'm going to duplicate the server, and I'm going to call it HTTPS. Most people will not need to do this, and so I'm just going to paste in my my existing server file, which is looks like this. Basically the same. It still requires the app and has the port, but it also sets the HTTPS stuff, the server and the key and the certificate, and then it exports. So it's just like server, but it's a different version. So I'm going to come over here and Control C to quit, and now I'm going to run HTTPS. Oh, I have to do npm run start HTTPS. Okay, cool. So now I'm running, I'm using my server HTTPS wrapper, but everybody else that does this tutorial should use the default, which is, as you look inside the package, the default is start, or if you want to run nodemon start dev, that's probably actually what you should do. And so the benefit of using nodemon, which is whether you're using it with to just run the regular server or the server HTTPS wrapper, the benefit is that now I can come over here, I can make a change, and I hit save, and instantly this will it'll restart the server, reload all the dependencies, and show all my changes, as well as any errors I make as I develop this. And so yeah, so that's what you should be doing. You should run it like this: start npm start run start, like that, and it'll run start dev. Sorry, it'll run this one, and so that's what you should be doing if you're in development mode. And so you can see now we've got that HTTPS at localhost, whereas my other one, oh, it should say HTTPS. Okay, cool. So let's continue on. Now that we've got the wrapper and the package and the project all set up, let's start fleshing out the pieces of a Express app. So we want to make a new routes file. And this is going to be inside of a folder called app, where we're going to put all of our files, and it's going to be routes.js. And the benefit of putting all your routes in a separate file is that it allows your app file to just link all the dependencies together, but then all the actual work you do can be in separate routes. On a large project, you might have a separate file just for your API routes, another one just for login routes, where you have to be authenticated, another one just for public, another one just for error routes. So again, you have a lot of control over how you set up one of these apps. So inside of our routes file, we are going to, because this is a module, it's just like the NPM modules, like when we load Express, but this is a custom module. And so because it's a custom module, you have to wrap up all of the methods in it and export them. And you can do that one of two different ways. You can put them all inside of a single wrapping function, or you can declare module exports at the top and then add them to exports as you go. So I'll do the first type now, where we say module exports equals function app. Now the app will be passed in from the app file when we load the module, and you'll see that in a second. And so, but the first thing we're going to do is add our first route. And so we're adding a get route. So this is the method type. You have get, which is like every web page in the world calls get to load. It just gets the data from the server. You can also post, which pushes data to the server. Put, which is supposed to put data or put a record into a database on a server. Delete. You have all these different types of HTTP methods or verbs, and but get is the default one, and it's the one you'll see the most often. And so now you enter the string for the path that you're going to put the route at. So this is basically saying the home page for our website, because it's the / it's the root. So then it'll receive a request and response object. The request object, which I'll log here in a second, contains all kinds of data, and we'll just log it like this and see what it looks like. So this will be, so now we have a new route, and we have to import the route. Look into my example here so that I don't mistype something. And so down here at the bottom, we are going to require, and then we'll say / so that it knows where to look, and we'll look inside the app at the routes.js file. And then we will pass the app, the Express app, so it has access to it in the context of the file. So I hit save. No errors appeared down here, which is really great. And now I'll just come over here and open up a new tab, and we want to type localhost 3000 is the port we're testing on, and I'll hit and I'll run it, and I'm gonna just move this over here, and we can see note what's going on here. The page was requested, and we can see the request object, which is massive, was exported to the console, but because I didn't actually render a page or return, the server's just stuck in limbo. The request has never ended, and it will eventually when it times out. So I'm going to hit stop now, and we'll go back to our code. And so instead of logging the whole request object, what we're going to do is we're going to render a page. So the request comes into the server, to our node server, but we have to send a response back. And so the best way to do that, if you're just rendering the home page, is to render an actual page. So we could, here, let me do this first. So let's just send some text, and then we'll go back and we'll test it again, and whoops, and type it again. Cool. So let me scroll this down. Great. So we could see that NodeMon restarted after I saved it, and we can see now that we are using the response. So remember, the request comes in, it's full of all the details that express, it tells us like if a user is logged in, what their IP address is, all the details of the header of the request, and then the response is similar, but it's what's going back to the user's client. And here, so we're just using the send method to send some plain text, and so we've got our basic hello world here. And because it's plain text, it even if you view the source of this, you'll see that there are just these 5 characters, and that's it. There's nothing more. We haven't rendered a page or anything, and so we're going to do that next. We're going to use handlebars to render the page. So let's go ahead and make a views. Let's go ahead and set up all the details that we need for our handlebars template, for our HTML, and then we'll come back here and we'll flesh out this route a little better. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding all the public files. And so I'm going to say in add, I'm going to say add a new file, but I'm going to list a big path here. We want our public directory, which will contain all of our public files. We want an assets directory, which will contain images, JavaScript, and style sheets. And we want the JavaScript directory is going to contain a file main.js. All right. So you can see when I did that, it added all the directories that were required. And then I'll do the same thing here. And I'm going to I'm going to make a new file. This will be the default styles.css. And then I'm going to do the same thing, new folder, images. Cool. And so let me go into my Finder now and go ahead and add some test images here that we can use. And I'll paste these in our template, in our public. Cool. So we can use those in our project. And great. So now we need to, so we've got a public directory. So basically, this says, well, in a second here, let's go ahead and add the code that allows the server to serve this public directory. So we'll say app.use express static, and this will look at the current directory name, and it'll look for the word public. And so this says it'll look for the directory public. So this essentially says this is our static directory. These are not dynamic files. We're going to serve these up as just static files, and we'll be able to use them in the public website. They'll be publicly accessible in the app, we can go and test that right now by going and doing, let's see, assets. Notice that the word public is not visible. It's just the contents of the public directory. So assets, CSS styles.css now exists there. And there's nothing in there right now, so I'll just write something CSS. And then we'll do the same thing for the JavaScript, maybe console.log, hello world. Okay, so there we go. There's our CSS file. Again, these are just public assets. They're not dynamic. There's nothing special about them. We'll just use them in a public website, just like any other static file. Okay, so now that we have these public files, we need some views where we can construct the content that the users of our website see. So let's add a new file, and we're using handlebars on this project. So we're going to put everything inside of a folder called views, and we're going to make another folder in there called layouts, and then we're going to use main.hbs, which is the short version of the handlebars extension. And we're also going to add a new folder in here called layouts, or sorry, we've already got layouts. We need partials that we'll use later. And then we need a new file called home. And this will be the, so while the main, it will be the main layout, which contains the kind of structure of the HTML, the header and the footer, all the files that are just views files like home HBS will be just the content of the page that is the view. So to see what this looks like, we will let's go and use inside of our main file. We want to we're going to use the Twitter Bootstrap. We're going to use Bootstrap 5, which was just released, and you can click Get Started and come down here and copy their like Hello World template. And I'm going to hide the Git file there. Okay, and let me zoom out just a little bit. And so this is the default for Bootstrap. I'm going to make a couple changes here. I'm going to delete these separate files, and I'm going to delete this, and I'll make a note here that says, Bootstrap, and I'm going to link to our main file that we added. So that'll be in the root directory, assets, JavaScript, main.js. All right, so that is done. I'll beautify that, clean this up a little bit, and then I'll come up here and I'll do the same thing with our CSS file, assets, CSS, styles.css. And so everything else is fine. Oh, I do want to add, we are using Jquery, so let's get the Jquery CDN, and we want the 3.51 minified, not the slim. And we can just copy the entire script line right there, and we'll need that before our main.js file so that the Jquery is accessible. And we have to add this because Bootstrap 5 does not contain Jquery anymore. Right, so there's one more thing we have to do here. We are going to add in a, we're just going to do a div with the class of container, the Bootstrap container, and this will be the body of, this will contain the content. Remember I said that the layout is the structure of the HTML page, and then it will dynamically get whatever view, the content of whatever view is requested. So So every page, every web page that runs on our server will use this as the main layout, but it'll dynamically insert whichever view, whether it's the home or about page or whatever, right in this section. And this, so the three handlebars means that it's going to insert the content of another one. And so let's set up our home file. We'll just go ahead and say I'm going to do another container just because I'm used to doing that. This is a template, so like you would edit all this stuff anyway. But per the Bootstrap documentation, we have a container and then a row and then a column. And we are going to go ahead and add in some Bootstrap here. Bootstrap's breakpoints. We're going to use a 6-column wide layout. We're going to offset by 3 so that we have the 3 columns on each side and the 6 is just in the center. We're going to center all our text, and we are going to add a little space at the top and bottom. The Y, we're going to add a margin on the Y axis. And then let's add a hello world here. And then we'll go and render this in our view. So beautify. And now we'll come back to our routes, and instead of just sending a plain text message, we are going to render the home view. And that should be all we need. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back. We have no errors in our console, and we'll come back here, done with Bootstrap, and we should be able to just refresh this. And hey, there's an error. Okay, awesome. You see that we've got an error that printed to the browser, but it also logged in our console. You can control that, but the first business is to fix that error. So if you go into your apps file, you'll see the problem, and it is because, as the error says, the same error that appeared in the console, error, no default engine was specified and no extension was provided. So we didn't specify a view engine. So we didn't actually tell Express which view engine to use. So let's do that now. We'll say const express handlebars equals, and then we'll require express handlebars module that we loaded when we installed this at the beginning, and then we'll say that our app engine, the extension is going to be HBS, not the long form of handlebars. We'll call the express handlebars method here and pass in the following options: our default layout, which is going to be the main file. And so it'll automatically know to look inside of the layouts folder for a layout called main, which is right here. And then we will explicitly state that our extension name is going to be HBS. And cool. So then the last thing we have to do is tell the app that that it has the correct, we have to tell it where the views directory is, and we have to actually set the view engine. So we'll say views is going to be the directory, and we'll use that path module to join our current directory name with the views directory, kind of like we did above with the static directory. And then we'll set the view engine is going to be, as I said earlier, HBS. All right, cool. So I hit save. I'll come back to the page and refresh, and we've got our successful hello world message. And we can see, if we look at the source code, that we've got the entire layout that we specified, and then the content of home.hbs view is dynamically being inserted in there. So excellent. So let's take this one step further. So we're done with our app file for a little bit. Let's take this one step further and pass in some data that the view can then render. So we'll say to do this in your render, the second parameter for the render is an object, a JavaScript object that contains a list of keys and values for variables that you want to be accessible in handlebars. So we'll say home is going to just say homepage. And let's go ahead and set the image that we want to use as cat.jpg, or we'll say cat1 because they're named or numbered like that. All right. So yeah, so again, we've got our route here, and we're rendering the home view, which is dynamically going to be merged with the main layout, and we're passing these two variables now. So if we want to use those, we're done with our main layout. So we can come into, and we're done with main JavaScript, we're done with styles. Cool. So now we can come in here and say, here, let me take a look at my my notes here. Yeah. So let's add a paragraph, and we'll say this is this is plain HTML I'm writing, but then I'm going to add with two of the mustaches or curly braces, two opening and two closing, and then the variable name that I passed in the render parameter. So it'll say this is the title, and then I'm going to add that image, use the image variable, and I'll say in the root directory, inside of assets, inside of images, there is a file called something, and I'm going to dynamically, I'm going to use handlebars, and it'll dynamically insert this data in there, which is the variable name img, and the alt is the alt text is for screen readers, and I'll just write random image. And I'm going to go ahead and add some Bootstrap stuff here. We'll use class, image fluid, and we'll set the width to 100. And this way, all the sizes will be the same, and it'll look nice. Cool. So let's save this and go back and refresh this page. All right. So as we see, when we inspect the page, there's all of our data, and it's being automatically inserted here, thanks to handlebars. And so this is templating. This is how you use a template, and then your data is automatically inserted here, and you don't have to spend a lot of time writing and rewriting HTML and worrying about merging the JavaScript and the HTML together. It takes care of that piece for you. So let's do one more thing to make this homepage a little more interesting. We're going to delete the cat1 file because there are actually 5 cat files and named and numbered accordingly. And so I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to create a random number, and I'm going to set it equal to math.floor. Oh, actually, I should say ceiling because they're numbered. Let me just check. Oh, no, they're numbered 0 through 4, so we'll do floor. And we're going to round down. That's what math.floor does. Math.random, which gives us a number between 0 and 1, and then we'll multiply that by 5. And so this will give us a number between 0 and 4 inclusive. And I'll make this I'll beautify it. And now we're going to use that number right here. And I'm going to concatenate this old school with the strings and the plus sign, or the plus operator, and I'll just stick the R in there. And cool. So now we're using data from our server, sticking that dynamically into this variable and then handlebars is taking care of the rest of it. So I'll save, come back and start refreshing this, and we'll see that each time it's it's going to get a different cat image, and it's just picking a number between 0 and 4, and there are the correct file names are in there. All right, so cool. So now we've got our handlebars, our views set up, and let's see what else have we not done. We set up Git, yeah, and to push this to the server, we just naturally you just click publish repository after you make your commits, and then let's see, project setup, create the core app, and oh, we have to set up Heroku. Okay, so let's do that. Let's see, we have our views directory, we have our app directory. Oh, let's add one more thing. We're going to add some middleware, and I'm just going to paste this one in because, and you can paste an entire file between Atom projects, which is so nice. So just click here. I copied it from a different project. I'm just going to paste it right there. So middleware in Express is a way to, Express is handling requests. And so for each request that comes in, you have a kind of stack of things that happen before you return the response. And all of your stuff you do is it's dependent upon logic you build in your app. But you can also use this concept that Express has built in called middleware, which allows you to insert something that happens at any time in this request to response stack. And so the middleware that I'm about to show you is a module that all it does is just log information to the console, and we're not going to write it from scratch, but it essentially uses the other custom module method that I mentioned, where you set up a variable called exports at the beginning, and you just add methods or functions to that, and then you go into your main file, and you say that you're going to use it. And so I'm gonna load the middleware here, and this is just this middleware. All it does is just logs every request when it starts and closes to the console. You wouldn't want this in production. It's just for seeing to confirm that your request is made correctly, whether it's happening under the hood with asynchronous JavaScript, or you're making the request directly to your test localhost. Yeah. So I'm going to use a capital here to denote that this is a module that has a lot of functions that I will continuously use, and that's just a naming convention I came up with, and you'll never see it anywhere else unless you use C#. Then you'll start to see object names with caps, but in general JavaScript is camel case. So just like all other modules, you'll say you'll list the path of it, and it's middleware.js, and then but to actually use middleware in your project, you say app.use, and then you middleware and we're doing the show requests. And you don't have to add this. You just say, do it like, you just give the name of the function and it'll automatically use it. And so I'll come over here, and now when I come back to the test and I hit refresh, every time that I hit refresh, my text request, get, and the path, the time it was started and when it finished, there's not much going on, so it happens at the same second pretty much. But it's just another confirmation, another piece of information that you can use when you're building an app and testing it and debugging. And so it's super helpful. Okay, so let's go. And the next piece is that we have to set up Heroku. And so, so you should have a Heroku account. You should have the Heroku command line helper. So let's look at that. So again, we've covered almost all the front end at this point. The HTML, Bootstrap, JavaScript. In the next video, I'll cover using asynchronous JavaScript on both the front end and the back end, and setting up the API stuff that I talked about here. And so there's our files. So Heroku is a cloud platform as a service. It's been around since 2007, and it essentially is an abstraction of, it allows you to publish an app on a server, basically built in any popular language, and it provides a platform for you to publish an app. If you look not too long ago in the history of hosting, and I'll make this bigger. If you look at the history and the possibilities for the types of ways that you could publish an app on the internet, or a website in general, you either had to use shared hosting, which was cheap, but you didn't have any control. You certainly couldn't build an app and publish it there. You could only use something that was pre-built, and the shared hosting tools made it possible for you. You could pay a little bit more, or sometimes a lot more, and get a VPS, or virtual private server, but then you had to manage the security and manage installations. And it still wasn't that powerful, and it wasn't that cheap. So then you could do dedicated hosting, which is you control the entire rack. The entire box is yours to rent. But then you really, like it says here, you have maximum control. There's a lot of overhead in terms of price, and a ton of overhead in terms of setting up server security, making sure that all your ports are working correctly. So not too long ago, cloud hosting has really surged past these in terms of the main method people use to build and publish apps on the web. Cloud hosting is scalable, instantaneously scalable. You don't have to take care of security or do any maintenance, really. You can just focus on being a developer, which is what you really need to do. And so it's what you call a platform as a service. And so you can still do these other things like infrastructure as a service, but then you have to manage your own security, and you don't want to do that. So Heroku and these other cloud platforms use what's called containerization. And Heroku's lightweight containers are called dynos. They're like other cloud services. You can scale them up or down. You can add additional services onto them. But it's a really nice abstraction that allows you to just focus on building your app. So, like I said, you need a Heroku account. You need to download and install the Heroku command line tool, which I linked to here. It's pretty easy on a Mac using the homebrew. On Windows, apparently it's a little harder, but you can follow the instructions there. And I just want to make sure I covered all the details here. Yeah. And then you can check your version. So I'm going to shrink this back again so that we can see our, so it's a really good idea to have two separate terminals so that you can leave one running and run commands in the other. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. Put this one in here and this one down here. So I'm in the same directory because I used the keyboard command to open up terminal from the repository, and I'll just run the Heroku-version and guarantee that it's installed. I can see my version of my Heroku, I can see what I'm running on my own computer, and I can see the version of Node that I'm running. And then you need to log in, and I'm already logged in, but you can do this. If you do Heroku login, it'll prompt you on the command line. If you do Heroku, let's see, the other method was Heroku login if you do it with the it'll allow you to log in, enter your credentials in the command line. And so then the next thing you need is a proc file. And so I'll go ahead and create one. Proc file goes in your main directory. Close all these things. It goes in the main directory of your file, and it's really simple. It just looks like this. It says web npm start. So it's basically doing the same thing that the package file says right here to start up your server. Npm start will run this, and and because we're exporting our app, then we'll push our project to Heroku. It'll export, and they will take care of running, and then give us a way to look at the console. Cool. So there's the proc file. It's done. And now we have to create the app, right? So here you would say Heroku create, and if you just did that, it'll give a name for you, and they generate some kind of unique, funny name. But if you want to have some control, you can say Heroku create and then list the name of the app you want to make. Now I'm going to put the name for the app I added, and it's going to tell me that it can't create it because that name is already taken, which is just fine because that's exactly what I want. But you will see it'll say creating, and then it'll give you the URL for the app you created, and when you do that, it should add your git remote -v, or it should add your the remote repository names to git remote. I'm just gonna hit pause here, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete. I'm gonna delete my Express app, and then I'll restart it so you can see what it looks like when I do it. So I'm going to hit pause and delete that. Okay, so I've deleted the app, and so now I should be able to run this one again, and it should say creating, and there it is. And so it didn't just create it, it added, it told me where my final URL will exist. And it also added a remote to a remote Git repository to my local Git file. And so now you need to commit all your work. So I'll say git add and git commit, and I'll say in the message that I'm doing a Heroku hello world. And so all that's committed, and I can go back into GitHub Desktop and I'd see that all that was just committed here. I can see also an atom, and I actually haven't set up a remote yet. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this on GitHub, and oh, and it looks like it's pushing to Heroku. It looks like the default is to Heroku, and that's totally cool. You could also do that using this command right here, git push Heroku main, which will push the main branch to Heroku. And as soon as that's done, great, it is, then you need to start up a web dyno, which, like I said, is the container that abstracts the work of running your app. And so I'll do that right now on the command line, and Heroku ps:/scale web1. So it's going to scale all the other dynos because I'm only paying for a certain amount. I'm actually not paying any; they're all free. But so now I can come and test my new app that I just built, which is this template, and I can see again this is my local host, but I can run the Node Express template in on the Heroku cloud with this URL, and there it is. And so if I hit refresh, it does exactly the same thing as my localhost version did. It does, and so that's really great. So it's so Git is using, or because we're using Git, we have this. We have it published in GitHub, but we also use it to push all of our changes up to the Heroku server. And so to make any updates to this would be really easy if we wanted to go and change, for example, where's my my routes file? So instead of homepage, I could say this is my new and improved homepage, and save that. It refreshes locally. This is my new and improved homepage, and but we have to commit in order, and then push it to Heroku for that change to happen. So git add, git commit, new message, another commit. And then it was, let's see, I have to just check my notes here. Git push Heroku main. Git push Heroku main. We'll push the main branch up there, and there aren't that many files, so it won't take much time. And then it's going to install all the, it's going to push all my changes, and then it's going to restart the server. And then once this is done, then my new and improved homepage will be live on the Heroku server. And so I'll just hit refresh here. So for some reason, my mic cut out on the at the end of that last video, and so I just wanted to record the end of it again to show the updated hello world template working on Heroku with the new and improved homepage. I've got Heroku logs -- tail running, which will show you the output from the server, the console log basically, which is really nice to have. And then just to recap, so what we covered is the first part of this video. We built this template Node Express project, Git, Node npm. We installed Express handlebars. We set up a single route and some custom modules. I think and then we set up, of course, Heroku. The last thing that I forgot to do, and I'll do now, is that we're going to add a second route just for our API. So the get verb plus the root up here is for the home page, which we can see right here. But we're going to make one for our API that we'll connect to with the web form that we're going to make in the final version. So we'll use again the verb we get, but it'll be the root directory /API. So anything that any request to that route will call this callback function here. So we got the request and the response object, the fat arrow function, and then we are going to so instead of using the response object to render a view from our handlebars views, we're going to use the JSON uh, um, the JSON method on the response object and send a JSON object back to the browser or the client, whichever client is making that call. And so we're going to say let's go ahead and add. So the status sets the status as 200, which means that the request returned successfully, everything was cool. The 200 is the HTTP code that says everything's cool, whereas like 400 is an error, 404 is the classic file not found error. You don't technically have to set the status when you do JSON. It sets it automatically, but I like seeing the status. I like kind of knowing that, because it's possible that if in an error route, I would say that the status is 404. And so yeah, so this basically like creates an API now. It's really it's that simple. So I'll save it. It refreshed here, and to test this, we can just do /API, and now I have a JSON viewer installed in my Chrome. It's an extension, and the raw data looks like this, but the JSON extension that I'm using, the JSON viewer extension, beautifies it and makes it readable, and you can expand objects and so forth. And cool. So now we have our base API and our base homepage, and they're both set up, and this template is ready to go. It's got enough cats, so we're going to consider it done. Cool. So in the next video, I'll cover APIs in more detail. We'll connect to the weather.gov API. We'll use Postman to see the responses from that API. And then we will build out the logic of our application. And we'll use Fetch to get the API data, and we'll connect our web forms to our backend. And then we'll publish all that to the cloud.